My name is Robert Horton. I work for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Natural Resources Conservation Service under USDA. And I serve on the Ecological Sciences staff here in North Carolina. And I'm a resource conservationist, but I do have responsibilities for forestry. That's one of my duties. So that's the reason I'm here talking to you today. Well, we like to use and want to use prescribed fire to address resource concerns that are found and identified out on the land. We generally do not, we plan to address resource concerns. So we may have resource concerns such as excessive fuel, which may cause wildfires, or we may want to restore certain native communities that require fire, or it just may be a wildlife objective. But depending on what the landowner's objectives are and what their resource concerns are, fire is a tool that can be used to address those resource concerns in forest land and actually in open land also. The Natural Resources Conservation Service administers a program nationwide called the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. And in that program, we offer cost share to landowners for implementing prescribed fire on their land to address resource concerns. Now, in order to be eligible for those kinds of things, you have to come into our local service centers and apply. It's not an automatic. There's ranking involved. And depending on what problems there are out on the ground and what resource concerns are being addressed, an application may rank higher than another application. And we start at the highest ranking applications and come down until we run out of money. But we utilize cost sharing for normal individuals. We also have a little higher cost share rate for underserved communities and new and beginning farmers. So people can expect these kind of terminologies when they come into our office. And I think most forest owners sometimes are a little confused because they have to actually, most of them have to sign their land up with the Farm Services Agency in order to be eligible for our program. The Farm Services Agency generally is involved with crops and crop production. However, they are the USDA agency that determines land eligibility. So in order for us to be able to cost share, the land has to be eligible and the individual that's applying has to be eligible. So those have to be run through the Farm Services Agency to determine that. So therefore, everybody's got to have a farm number and a tract, and everybody's got to go through that process, which takes a little time, sometimes for forest landowners that are not used to having to come into the Farm Services Agency every day either, much less to our office for things that they may want. Well, we have other cost share programs. WIP was the other major one, the Wildlife Habitat Incentives Program, but that has changed course in the last 2 years in that it's more towards identified threatening and addressing threatened and endangered species, and we don't have the fire determined designated species in North Carolina. Most of that's a little farther south in South Carolina around to Alabama, where WIP can really address resource concerns for identified threatened endangered species with fire. So WIP has kind of slowed down the amount of cost share that we do use there. There are other programs that don't directly use fire that we administer, but if you normally use it in your operation, if you normally use fire in your operation, it can increase your chances of qualifying for the Conservation Stewardship Program, which is a program that provides a small per acre payment for good conservation work that's been ongoing on a farm, and it's a kind of a reward program for that. those are the basic NRCS related programs. There's some other programs that are available through other government agencies, and most of our people in the local offices should know whether those programs are available in whatever area you may be coming into. So it's hard to give you a good general response on what other programs may be available, but locally our employees should know that. Well, generally we have a presence in every county in North Carolina, and I would say that's generally nationwide also. We may not actually have an individual that's permanently assigned permanently in that county, but we have somebody that's assigned to serve that county. The best way you can find us would be to look us up for the local USDA Service Center. All of the USDA agencies are co-located, usually in a service center in a county. It may not be in yours, but it would probably be in an adjacent county if it's not in your county proper. So look for your local USDA Service Center, call them, find out whether or not that service center services your county or not, and if so, that's the first place I'd start. The cost share program should cover the turnkey aspects of completing a prescribed burn, which would include cost share for fire breaks if they're needed, along with cost share for doing the actual burn itself. And we pay based on a set scenario rate, and that's what you will get. If it costs you more than that scenario rate, you have to figure that you're getting a percentage or a share of that rate. Generally, you will have the local participant will bear some cost out of doing a burn on their land. Fire breaks are expensive. Keeping a piece of machinery out on site for standby in case of a fire getting out, those are really some of the major expenses. And then finding somebody that's willing to do that burn for you, and a contractor that is qualified and can do it for you. But coming into the office, understand that you would need, if it's on woodland or forest land, you're going to have to present a forestry plan that indicates, prescribed burning has been planned on that tract and why it's been planned. And then once we get into the application process, if there are any questions whatsoever, the participant may have to get up and talk to a prescribed burner and have them look at the site and say, yes, this is capable of being burned, before we can actually prepare a contract. All of our cost share is provided through contracts, which is a little different than other cost share programs in the past, meaning when you sign the contract that says you're going to do it, and we say we're going to provide this amount of technical assistance, this amount of cost share for you to do it. And so understand that when there are contracts involved, there are expectations involved. So that's what I think they can expect out of us, people can expect out of us, is expectations to do the work, expectations to get it done on time, and certainly we would expect ourselves to provide that cost share in a timely manner once the work is done. I think challenges for participants in our program with prescribed fire are dealing with weather situations that will come up. Understand that there's a set general number of days during the season when burning can be done, depending on the amount of burning that's done in your area. That could shrink, and it's very important that these practices get done in a timely manner. Our contracts expect implementation or the beginning implementation of a practice within a year's time. So if a year's gone by and there's nothing happened whatsoever, you know, there are going to be some people probably coming out want to know, well, why hasn't anything been done? You know, what needs to be done to get this back on track? And there may be paperwork involved to get it back on track. The other thing I think it's important that I don't think enough of the participants pay attention to is that they really need to communicate and stay in constant communication with an RCS. If there are issues, let us know. Stay in constant communication with their contractor if the contractor is going to be doing the burning. You know, if it's within a month time and something of the time it needs to be burned and it hasn't been burned yet, you know, pick up the phone, talk to that contractor. Where am I on your list? When do you expect to get here? I really do think it would be helpful if participants, that's our biggest problem, is not getting things done on time. And then we get a backlog of work. That means that's that much more work that has to be done in that particular county, which may shrink the amount of time that we have to burn due to the amount of smoke that's going into the air in a year. So it's important that all this gets done in a timely manner. Those are some of the biggest hurdles to overcome, other than the paperwork hurdles of dealing with a contract. Conservation, we are about conservation. It's part of our agency's name. And we want to utilize fire where it needs to be used, in a manner it needs to be used in a professional way to address identified resource concerns. And that can be a number of different things that fire can do for an individual that wants to apply fire on their land. But as long as the fire is done for the correct reason, in the correct manner, under the correct conditions, usually by somebody that has some experience in doing prescribed burning, there's going to be a conservation objective obtained. And if there's any kind of restoration work that's planned, a lot of threatened and endangered species and native species are fire dependent, and they require actually fairly frequent fire to intermittent fire in order to thrive. So all of this, it depends on the objective, but so long as there's a resource concern there that needs to be addressed for that landowner's objectives, we want to use fire if it makes sense to accomplish those objectives. And restoration in longleaf is probably our biggest, that's probably where we spend most of our money, or applying fire in longleaf situations, because longleaf has a fire dependency and a fire habitat, especially in the understory, and it requires fire to develop that habitat and maintain it. So, and we have a specific pool of money that is specifically for longleaf every year, and so that offers anybody that wants to do work in longleaf situations a real good opportunity for cost sharing for really many of the practices that they'd want to apply in a longleaf stand or to establish a longleaf stand.